Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you turn to these videos as a gentle way to unwind and ease into sleep. So before you drift off tonight, could you help me with a small favor? Just leave a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. My goal is to hit around 200 likes within the first 24 hours. Simple actions like these help YouTube appreciate the content and spread the show to more people. Now then, let's dive into tonight's horror stories. I thought I had done everything to become beautiful, but I didn't know that the price of beauty was my life. I'm Kate, 25 years old, working at a marketing company. Every morning I tried to fit in with the other girls in the office. My colleagues were all beautiful girls who always wore fashionable clothes. I, on the other hand, always felt like a bowling ball. I was over 6 feet tall, but weighed almost 300 pounds. For me, the most haunting thing wasn't horror stories. It was my own weight and appearance. That day, a colleague sitting next to me giggled when she saw my baggy clothes. She pointed and said something to another colleague with a look of contempt. The ridicule wasn't new, but it was like a knife wound that hurt me more each time. I bowed my head, pretending to be busy with the papers on my desk, my cheeks burning with shame and wanting to disappear from the room. That afternoon, on the train ride home, I huddled in the corner of a car. My mind was still reeling from the mockery at work. A woman walked over and asked if she could sit next to me. I looked up and was overwhelmed by her beauty. Her hair was shiny, her skin was flawless, and she had a perfect body. She introduced herself as Grace and sat down next to me. The faint, pleasant scent from her body was lovely. Grace looked at me with curiosity. I, on the other hand, felt incredibly shy and insecure in the face of her beauty. But Grace started complimenting me on my beautiful eyes and balanced facial features. My heart pounded. No one had ever complimented me like that before. She said she worked in the modeling industry and saw potential in me. It was hard to believe, even ridiculous. "You just need to lose a little weight." Grace kept a bright smile on her face, and I felt the sincerity in her voice. Grace pulled a piece of paper and a small bottle of pills from her handbag. She explained that this was the latest product from a lab in New York, that it had miraculous effects, and that in just 1 week I would see a complete difference. I looked at the bottle in Grace's hand. Inside were small white pills with no label or information. Grace held the bottle out to me and said it was a gift. When the train stopped, Grace stood up, waved goodbye, and disappeared into the crowd. I sat there, clutching the bottle in my hand with a sense of bewilderment. When I got home, I sat in front of the mirror and took a good look at my plump body. Grace's words echoed in my head. She was right. I needed to lose weight. If I were thinner and prettier, maybe my colleagues would stop making fun of me. I opened the bottle and took out a few pills. Taking a deep breath, I swallowed them with a glass of cold water. They didn't have any special taste. That night, I slept very soundly. The next morning, as soon as I opened my eyes, I felt my body was strangely light. I sat up and looked down at my hands. Oh my God. My fingers had become long and slender, the joints clearly visible under the tight, thin skin. I ran to the mirror, my heart pounding. The face in the mirror was no longer mine. My body had lost at least 50 pounds in just one night. I stood in front of the mirror, trembling as I touched my cheeks. It was all real. A feeling of joy mixed with confusion exploded within me. I quickly got ready for work. At the office, the security guard in the lobby looked at me with a bewildered expression and asked who I was looking for. When I said I was Kate Swift, his eyes widened in surprise, and he exclaimed, "Oh my!" In the office, a few female colleagues gathered around me. For the first time, I was the center of attention. I felt a strange satisfaction watching their envy. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. When I got home that night, I took more of the pills, doubling the dose from yesterday. I swallowed them eagerly, hoping for the next miracle. The next morning, I woke up with a gnawing hunger. Looking in the mirror, I was startled by the next change. My cheekbones were prominent. My hands were so thin that I could see every blue vein. But I still thought I was beautiful. The intense hunger drove me to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and ravenously ate everything. Bread, cheese, cold cuts, even some withered apples. Strangely, after eating until my stomach was full, I still felt hungry. And when I looked in the mirror, my body even seemed thinner. These pills were a miracle. I could eat as much as I wanted without fear of gaining weight. I took another handful of pills. On the third day, I woke up with a severe headache. In the mirror, my reflection made me step back. My skin had started to flake off at my elbows, knees, and cheekbones. Dry, fish-like scales of skin fell to the bathroom floor every time I moved. But in my deluded mind, I still thought I was getting more beautiful, getting closer to my ideal image. On the way to the office, my vision became blurry. Everything around me swayed. I had to lean against a wall to keep from falling, my breathing coming in short, rapid gasps. When I walked into the office, the air went silent. Everyone looked at me with horror. My boss came over, his face full of worry, and told me I needed to see a doctor immediately. I insisted I was fine because I had a very important meeting that needed me. My boss wanted to cancel the meeting, but I almost screamed. I had been preparing for this project for a month. In the meeting room, I stood in front of the presentation board, trying to focus on the numbers and charts. But everything was fading before my eyes. I felt something warm crawling up my throat. I opened my mouth to continue speaking, but dark red blood gushed out. Everyone in the room screamed in terror. I collapsed to the cold floor, and the world around me sank into darkness. I came to, my head throbbing with pain. My hand was still clutching a bottle of diet pills, not the kind Grace had given me. The light on the ceiling was bright, and I felt dizzy. I slowly got up, my body feeling like an empty shell. I looked around and was surprised to realize I was in my own home. So all that horrible stuff was just a dream. I had passed out without even knowing it. My throat was parched. I shuffled to the fridge, pushing the door open with trembling hands. Inside, there were only a few withered boxes of salad. Bottles of diet pills filled the shelves. I looked down at my hands. They were gaunt and wrinkled. My joints protruded like sharp stones. This wasn't the beauty I wanted. This was destruction. The nightmare I just had showed me what I would become. These diet pills were killing me every day. The next morning, I took all the pills out to the trash. I went back to the kitchen and cooked a healthy, nutritious breakfast. For the first time in weeks, I could actually taste the food. I started to research how to exercise and eat healthy. A month later, my weight stabilized, and my skin was pinker and more radiant. I felt comfortable in my own body, and I was okay with gaining a few more pounds. Most importantly, I felt like I was actually living. Not because of my appearance, but because I had learned to love and take care of myself. I'm writing this with my hands still trembling, 3 months after escaping the worst nightmare of my life. But I haven't escaped the haunting of it yet. I'm trying to, and I believe I will. I'm telling this story because out there, someone else might be making the same mistake I did. I'm Lewis, 34 years old. Before everything happened, my life revolved around a single issue: my weight. From childhood, I was always bigger than my friends. As an adult, I tried everything from dieting and fasting to going to the gym, but nothing worked. Faye, a girl I dated last year, broke up with me. She said she couldn't keep waiting for me to change. Job opportunities were also lost because of my appearance. That night I was sitting in my apartment, scrolling through Facebook in a bad mood. Suddenly an ad popped up. It showed a pill called Slim Fast and promised, lose 20 pounds in just 2 weeks, no workout or dieting needed. This was obviously impossible, but I had lost all patience with my previous methods. I clicked on the link, read a bunch of testimonials from users, and looked at the before and after photos. The price wasn't too expensive. I ordered it right away. The package arrived 3 days later in a black box with no label other than a return address in a small town called Marfa, Texas. Inside were 30 pills, each the size of a pea, along with an instruction sheet. Take 1 pill every night before bed. Do not stop taking them halfway through. The effects will appear after the first 3 days. I took the first pill that night. It tasted bitter, leaving an unpleasant aftertaste in my mouth. I woke up the next morning feeling strangely light. The scale showed I had lost 5 pounds. I was overjoyed, thinking this was a good start. I looked forward to every night so I could take the pill. Imagining what I would look like made me smile to myself with happiness. But on the 3rd night, strange things started to happen. In the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up because of a freezing sensation spreading from my feet to my whole body. The room temperature was warm as usual, and the heating system was working fine. But I was trembling as if I were in a freezer. I pulled the blanket up to my neck and tried to fall back asleep. In my daze, I saw myself standing in an empty room with black walls, and there were faint, incomprehensible whispers coming from everywhere. I bolted upright, my heart pounding wildly. The next week, I lost another 17 pounds. My friends started saying I looked different. My best friend called to check on me because I hadn't replied to his messages all week. "Louis, are you okay?" I didn't know what to say. The truth was, I felt like I was living in a hazy dream. I couldn't distinguish between reality and my surroundings anymore. I told my friend I was just busy with work. I don't remember what night it was. I woke up and saw a black figure standing at the foot of my bed. It stood still. I felt it was staring directly at me, even though I couldn't see its eyes. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. I closed my eyes tightly, counted to 5, and then opened them. The figure was gone. The next morning, I found scratches on my arm. I didn't remember how I got them. I Googled slim fast side effects and found a small forum where a few other users reported similar symptoms. They talked about nightmares, the feeling of being watched, and figures. One person named Jesse wrote, "I stopped taking them after 2 weeks, but I still see them. They won't leave me alone." I was scared, but also somewhat relieved to know I wasn't the only one. Plus, I had lost weight in 2 weeks, a result I had never achieved with any other method. I decided to continue, and that was the biggest mistake of my life. By the 3rd week, my health began to decline rapidly. I was constantly tired and had trouble breathing, even just walking from my bed to the kitchen. My skin was pale, and my eyes were deeply sunken. But the worst thing was the craving for the pills. Whenever I thought about stopping, my body reacted violently. I had a pounding headache, my hands and feet shook uncontrollably, and it felt like thousands of ants were crawling through my veins. The figures now appeared not only at night. They followed me to the office, stood on the street corner while I waited for the bus, and even appeared in the mirror while I was in the bathroom. They started to whisper about death. One night, as I was lying in bed in a semi-conscious state, I heard a voice clearly. "Almost there, Louis. It's almost over." I sat up, turned on the light, but the room was empty. However, there were new scratch marks on the wall. The next morning, I decided to seek help. I went to a nutritionist and told him the whole story, showing him the remaining pills. 2 days later, the doctor called me back with results that sent a chill down my spine. The pills contained a few unknown substances, some metabolic stimulants, and animal bone ash. "I believe you have unintentionally participated in an ancient ritual. These pills are designed to open a connection with entities from another dimension. They feed on a person's life energy, and the addiction to the pills is a way to keep them attached to the victim." I felt like my world was collapsing. So, what do I do? The doctor referred me to a priest. An exorcism was held at the church. The priest prepared a circle of salt around me, lit candles, and recited prayers. The figures began to appear. This time they weren't just standing still. They moved, circling the salt circle like hungry wolves. They made a hissing sound like claws scratching. As the priest continued to pray, the entities became more aggressive. They attacked the invisible barrier around the salt circle, and with each impact, I felt like someone was tearing my insides apart. I screamed in pain. "Don't let them pull you out of the circle." After a final, painful hiss, the black figures vanished, and I fainted on the spot. When I woke up, I was lying on a couch in the priest's room. A sense of relief spread through my body, but I knew the battle wasn't really over. My health was severely damaged. It took 3 months of physical therapy for me to walk normally again, and the nightmares still came. More importantly, the story of Slim Fast quickly spread when I decided to speak out and warn everyone. Dozens of others also came forward telling similar stories. Slim Fast was banned, but the manufacturing company had disappeared without a trace. Now, I spend my time giving talks at community centers, sharing my story with people who are desperately looking for a quick weight loss solution. I want them to understand that there is no magic to changing your body, and the price you pay for shortcuts can be your life. I went through a painful journey with an eating disorder and finally found the path to recovery and self-love. I'm Ren, 19 years old. This story happened when I was 15, a high school student in Akron, Ohio. Back then, I always felt different. I stood out because I was bigger than the other girls in my class. I wasn't obese, I just always wore a bigger size. This made me start to notice my body. The comments became more frequent. A boy in the seat behind me would often whisper to his friend, "Ren looks like a bear in that shirt." I pretended not to hear, but every word burrowed deep into my mind. At home, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, turning from side to side, looking for flaws I had never noticed before. The next day in gym class, the teacher asked the whole class to run a mile around the track in 10 minutes. This was the first fitness test of the year. I ran as hard as I could, but my lungs felt like they were on fire, and my legs felt like lead. I was the last person to finish, taking 3 times longer than everyone else. The teacher looked at his stopwatch and shook his head. I saw the mocking laughter in the class. I put more pressure on myself. That night, I lay in bed and swore to myself that I would change. I would get thin and never let anyone look at me with pity again. I started by cutting down on my meals. Instead of 3 full meals, I ate only 2 small salads. I started running every morning around the neighborhood. After 2 weeks, I lost 5 pounds. My parents praised me a lot. My friends also stopped teasing me and started acknowledging my efforts. I felt happy and full of confidence. But 5 pounds wasn't enough. I wanted more. I started increasing my workout time from 2 hours to 5 hours a day. My meals were reduced to just 1. The results came quickly. The next month, I lost another 10 pounds. My clothes started to hang off me. My mom said my body was perfect. Just try to maintain your current figure and take care of your health. A few boys from other classes started to notice me. I felt like I was in control of everything, but I wanted even more. I increased my workout time every week, and my food intake was also reduced every week. I learned to count every calorie, to track every gram of food I put into my body. The numbers on the scale became an obsession. The first thing I did every morning was step on the scale. My mood for the day depended on it. I started to see changes in my body. My nails became brittle, my hair was falling out more, and I always felt cold even though it was summer. These were warning signs my body was sending, but I ignored them. Until I started to feel dizzy often. In class, I couldn't focus. I was always daydreaming, and I couldn't keep up with the lectures. Sleep became difficult. I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning because of hunger, but I refused to eat anything. When I looked in the mirror, I still saw a girl who was too fat. My mind had become so distorted that I couldn't recognize reality. On a weekend afternoon, my sister brought my niece, Zoe, to visit our family. I was sitting in the living room at the time. Zoe and I were very close. She would always run to me first when her mom brought her over to play. But that day, as soon as she saw me, she suddenly stopped. Her face went pale. After a few seconds of standing frozen, she started crying and ran toward her mom. "Mommy, there's a monster in the house." My sister hugged her, looking at me with a horrified expression. I ran upstairs to my room and stood in front of the large mirror. For the first time in months, I actually saw myself. My face was gaunt, my eyes were sunken like bullet holes, and my body was so thin you could count every rib. I looked like a real living corpse. I collapsed to the floor and cried. I regretted what I had done to myself. Remembering the look of fear in Zoe's eyes and her reaction, I felt even more scared and disgusted with myself. I grabbed everything within reach, throwing them at the mirror until it shattered. After a while, I stopped. I heard my sister knock and come in. She sat down next to me and hugged me. "Everyone is here for you. We're going to see a doctor first thing in the morning." I hugged her and cried loudly, while Zoe stood far away, looking at me with a worried expression. At the hospital, the doctor diagnosed me with severe anorexia nervosa. My weight was only 80 pounds, my heart was beating irregularly, and my body was in a state of exhaustion. "She needs to be hospitalized immediately. Her current condition is very dangerous," the doctor told my family. 2 weeks in the hospital were the darkest days of my life. My body rejected most foods. My stomach had shrunk so much that it could only hold a few spoons of soup at a time. I had to relearn how to eat slowly, little by little. There were times when I wanted to give up, but the image of the fear in Zoe's eyes reminded me of how far I had gone. I didn't want to be a monster in the eyes of the people I loved. The recovery process lasted for almost 6 months. Now I can look in the mirror and see a healthy and vibrant young woman. I still have difficult days, but I always have my family by my side to encourage me. And most importantly, I have learned to love myself. If you are reading this story and see yourself in it, know that you are stronger than you think. There is no single standard for beauty. And most importantly, you deserve to be loved and cared for at all times.
My name's Sandra, 35 years old. I'm a single mother with a 10-year-old daughter, Lainey. We were enjoying a rather cozy life due to my established real estate firm. I was going to be assigned a renovation project of an abandoned high-rise in downtown city. This project I had always been wanting for the last 20 years. It wasn't until now that I had enough finance to run it. This project was my father's legacy. But when the project went to its final stage, my father's company encountered some heavy problems and went bankrupt. I brought it back years later and running a renovation for his sake. On the day of site survey, I went along with the construction crew and Lainey. She was so excited and ran around the place with all her youthful joy. After just a moment, my eyes moved off her. Lainey was gone from my sight. I dragged myself all around the place calling for her, but there's no response. I called Lainey on her phone, and she said she's on 13F. Lainey turned the front camera on so I could see the surrounding. Upon seeing what she was showing, both familiar and creepily alien, I yelped aloud at Lainey, telling her to come out of there quickly. However, the phone suddenly lost its connection, so I frantically ran over that accursed place to get her. This building wasn't finished yet, so the only way from 6F to 13F was using the stairs. The high heel I wore really became a nuisance, where the leather ground on my skin and bled me. The moment I saw the familiar shape of my daughter, I rushed to her side. Lainey's action puzzled me. She was putting her hand over the picture of two hands holding each other on the wall. I dragged Lainey out, asking whether she was all right, only to have her say that the signal was really bad, she couldn't hear anything. Lainey and I went back down, and before leaving, I glanced back at the hands on the wall, and my stomach turned. I felt guilty thinking about it. In the evening, we, just like every day, would have dinner and talked about what happened in the day. Around 10 p.m., Lainey went to her room, at which point I bid her goodnight and went to my room as well. Around midnight, the commotion from Lainey's room jolted me from my sleep. I went around and saw her sleeping soundly on her bed. Sensing nothing out of the ordinary, I turned back, then suddenly felt a chill by Lainey's whisper, "Mom!" So I turned around, asking her, "What's up, honey?" Lainey was still there in her sleeping position, unchanged by what I saw before. Might just be my mind speaking, I thought to myself, before tiptoeing back to my room to not wake my daughter up. Next evening, I had to stay up rather late, until midnight to work. Then a slight humming jolted me from my working trance. That was clearly Lainey's voice, but that song she's humming, made me shudder. I ran to her room, seeing her not yet asleep, but sitting on her bed singing. The tune, the lyrics, all of them was slowly draining my sanity away, so I shook Lainey's shoulders. She opened up her eyes as if snapped from a trance, then stared at me, full of suppressed anger. "You'll pay for it." It was no longer my daughter's voice, but of someone else I knew too well. Her words stunned me. I could only squeeze my fingers in terror. Lainey woke up from the intense pain I accidentally caused her. She immediately told me that she's sleeping and not remembering anything that had just happened. However, the strings of creepiness didn't stop there, because the very next day, at exactly midnight, Lainey was this time in the living room, mumbling. I rushed downstairs immediately upon hearing it. The living room lights were all off. Lainey, in darkness and sleepiness, ran over to the front door, opening it. She invited in an invisible guest. Invisible indeed, because I could clearly hear the footsteps over the floor, which gave me goosebumps all over. Lainey happily asked the guest to sit down. Then she casually poured the juice to the glass opposite her. I couldn't take it any longer, so I rushed over her, shaking the girl out of her sleepwalking trance. Yes, she was really unresponsive, not yet snapped from that trance. A sound came over from behind me, and I was startled, realizing that the juice glass had emptied itself out. I immediately dragged the girl back to her room and locked the door. That's it. I'll watch over her tonight. A ringtone rang aloud from somewhere in the room, and it didn't take me too long to spot a strange phone under Lainey's pillow. Opening up the phone, it was the pictures taken of me and my friend back then in high school. And on that phone, I could read clearly the last text message sent to that person I knew too well. It was just too much for me. I could no longer hold back my tears anymore, hugging her, and fell asleep somewhere down the line. The next morning, Lainey got up and seemed to act normal again. "Where do you get this phone, honey?" Lainey told me that she got this phone on 13F of the building I was assigned to renovate. I gut-wrenched at her word. Something bad was about to happen. That ominous entity had likely followed us home, and soon it would come for Lainey, my daughter. That morning, I came alone to 13F. The closer I got to the graffiti, with two hands holding on each other's, a sense of dread and guilt washed over me. 15 years ago, I had a friend, and her name was Emily. We're like inseparable back then. Our families were close too. My father and Emily's all invested greatly into this building project. Emily and I were very excited on the prospect of us residing together in this apartment complex. But at that crucial part of the project, my father made a huge financial mistake that heavily impacted both his company and Emily's father's. My father had no other choice but to declare bankruptcy. My family must move out of the rundown house in the city's shantytown, while Emily's family tried to hold on, yet slowly sinking into further debt. Emily and I, we both spiraled further and further to despair. We grew to hate living in such hellhole outside of our control. On our very last text message, we decided to leave this hellish world together. One afternoon 15 years ago, Emily and we came together to 13F of this very building. Emily carried her father's shotgun. We planned to take turns shooting ourselves. Emily, without any hesitation, went first. And I was too panicked at that and ran away after seeing her turning inside out, so I left her there, alone, and not telling anybody about it. The regret washed over me. I should have been aware of that stupidity and stopped Emily altogether, but I didn't. I knelt over the wall. I begged Emily for forgiveness and for her to leave my daughter alone. Suddenly, a scribble appeared beside the two hands graffiti that read simply, "Payback." My body shook uncontrollably upon seeing it. I booked it right back home. The first thing I did was call out for my daughter. Inside her room, I was shocked seeing all the graffiti drawn from red markers all over her walls. Lainey was holding the shotgun and pointing it to her head. I jumped over with all haste. If there's a life to end, it's mine and not my daughter's. The moment I could touch the gun, the trigger slipped and shots fired. Blood oozed out all over my body and Lainey's, and I wielded the last of my strength to carry her outside, frantically calling for help. Immediate assistance meant my daughter's stable now, but due to the bullet trajectory to her brain, she's still in a very bad shape. The horror subsided, replaced with tragedy, and the graffiti disappeared. For now, I'm still trying to take good care of Lainey. Let's hope she might have the chance to recover. The weird thing about Emily seems to no longer be there anymore. Let's hope she forgives me.
I can still picture that night, freezing cold, right after Thanksgiving, when the empty highway turned into the last place I ever wanted to be. Leaving my grandma's house after a long day with family, my coat still smelled like turkey, pumpkin pie, and apple cider. It was pitch dark, and the only thing lighting up the road ahead was my headlights, casting shaky shadows of the trees. The suburban Pennsylvania roads felt weirdly quiet, like the later it got, the more it became its own little world. I didn't even notice my mistake. Somehow my gas tank had hit empty before I had a clue. I grumbled under my breath, half scolding myself, half hoping my car would magically make it to a gas station. Just when I thought I might be in the clear, the engine sputtered, coughed, and then dead silence. The car rolled a few more feet before giving up completely. I was completely stuck with no clue what to do. I wasn't about to call anyone for help. I just had to figure this one out on my own. I made up my mind to walk to the nearest gas station. I locked the car, shoved the key in my pocket, and stepped out. I looked around, dead silent, almost too quiet. The only sound was my footsteps crunching against the road. The flashlight on my phone barely lit up the path, just enough to see where I was going in the freezing night. The road felt endless. I checked my watch. Every minute dragged on like forever. The wind howled past my ears, trees casting shaky shadows in the dark, making everything feel even more off. A truck pulled up right next to me. The window slid down, and a middle-aged guy leaned out. The headlights hit his face, gaunt, tired-looking eyes, and a scruffy beard that hadn't seen a razor in ages. "Need a ride?" His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in a while. I shook my head, thanked him, and said I was almost at the gas station. He smiled. Something about it felt off. "It's freezing, and that's a long walk. Come on, hop in. I'll get you there in no time." I hesitated, but he kept insisting, saying it was far and not safe to be walking alone this late. I started second-guessing myself. After a few seconds of debating, I figured a quick ride would get me out of this mess faster. Inside the truck, the thick smell of cigarettes and engine oil hit me, making my stomach turn. He flicked on the radio, but instead of music or news, All I heard was static. Then he started mumbling. I couldn't make out much, but every now and then I caught words like God, salvation, and sin. I tried to stay calm, locking my eyes on where the gas station lights should be, but all I saw was darkness. The thick, uneasy silence in the truck stretched on for probably around 10 minutes. Then I spotted the gas station up ahead, and relief washed over me. But instead of pulling in, he drove right past it. I tried to stay positive. Maybe he just didn't notice it. "Hey, you just passed it." I tried to sound casual, but my voice was tight. He didn't answer. His grip on the steering wheel tightened, and the truck started picking up speed. "Shut up." His voice was low, sharp, almost a growl. "You're gonna do exactly what I tell you." A wave of cold fear crashed over me. I darted a glance at the door handle, yanked on it, locked. I turned to look at him, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I don't want any trouble. Just stop the car and let me go." He sneered, eyes flashing with something unhinged. "You don't get it. This isn't about what you want." I knew I couldn't wait. As the truck turned a corner, I saw my chance. With everything I had, I swung and punched him square in the face. He let out a scream, the truck swerved, and we crashed straight into a ditch. I slammed hard against the door. When the dust settled, I saw him slumped over the steering wheel, completely out cold. I didn't waste a second. Ignoring the pain, I kicked at the door over and over, shoving it with everything I had. Finally, it burst open, and I took off, sprinting down the dark road, too scared to even glance back. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted the glow of the gas station up ahead. I stumbled inside, gasping for air, barely able to get a word out as the clerk stared at me, wide-eyed. All I could manage was, "Please, call the cops." The police showed up and found the guy still slumped over in the truck, completely out. Turned out, he had a history of mental illness. This wasn't his first time causing trouble. I was lucky to get away, but that night never really left me. Every time I drove down that highway, I could feel it, like someone was watching me from the shadows, their cold stare cutting through the windshield. And I promised myself, never again, no matter what, would I ever take a ride from a stranger. I am Claire, 26 years old, a college student in the morning, and a night shift employee at a 24-hour quick-trip convenience store in the evening. This job wasn't an ideal choice, but it helped me manage rent and buy little things. On quiet nights in the store, the fluorescent lights are cold and bright, and the neon sign outside flickers occasionally, as if it might go out. The sound of the air conditioner hums, and the automatic door opening sometimes makes me jump. One evening at the beginning of the month, I noticed the presence of a strange man. He was tall, thin, with messy black hair as if it had never been combed. A worn gray jacket hung loosely over his shoulders. Every time he came in, he would stand at the back corner of the store, holding a bottle of water, but never walking up to the counter. What was stranger was his gaze. He didn't just observe me, but seemed to look right through me, like he wanted to read my thoughts. The more I saw him, the more I realized a pattern. He always came at 1 a.m., standing near the emergency exit, holding a bottle of water and staring. One night, while I was checking the shelves, I noticed the water bottles at the back corner were out of order, even though I had just arranged them not long ago. A feeling of unease washed over me when I discovered one bottle had been opened and placed slightly out of line, as if someone had intentionally left a clue. It wasn't just at the store. I began to feel like I was being watched even when I was at home. One night, just as I was about to turn off the lights and go to sleep, I heard soft footsteps outside the window. I held my breath and listened, but the sound vanished soon after. Another time, when I came home late, I noticed the front door was slightly open. I was sure I had locked it before I left. Nothing was missing inside, but the feeling of unease lingered. One night, as I walked to the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of someone standing in the far corner. When I turned back, the shadow was gone. Another time, I found a piece of paper wedged under the windshield wiper of my car. It had nothing written on it, just a smudge of ink, as if it had been wet. These events made me nervous, but I didn't dare tell anyone. One night, he came closer.
Is that your old Toyota in the parking lot?
His voice was hoarse and cold. I froze for a moment, then nodded. He didn't say anything more, just turned and left. After that, I didn't see him anymore. I felt a sense of relief, and life went back to normal. A month passed, and I almost forgot about the strange man. But one early morning, when I went to my car after a shift, I noticed a large stain on the windshield. The car door seemed to have been opened. The driver's seat was pushed back, and the rearview mirror was askew. I told myself someone must have mistaken the car for theirs, but a feeling of unease still gnawed at me. 2 days later, I noticed a faint handprint on the car window. The fear grew, but I tried to reassure myself. That morning, it was freezing cold. I finished my shift at 6 a.m. and walked out to the empty parking lot. The early morning mist covered the Toyota, and when I got closer, my heart skipped a beat. Through the windshield, I saw a vague figure in the back seat. My hands trembled, but instead of running away, I picked up a metal rod nearby and slowly approached. I opened the car door, holding my breath. Inside, no one was there, just the familiar gray jacket lying on the back seat. I found a note in the jacket pocket. "Be careful. He's watching you." My heart stopped, and I rushed to lock the car, running into the store to call the police. When the police arrived, they found an old phone hidden in the jacket. The phone contained photos not just of me, but of 2 other women in town. One of them had gone missing a few months ago. But the story didn't end there. A week later, the strange man appeared in front of the store again. But this time, he didn't look at me. He gave me a worried glance, walked closer, and said,
Don't trust anyone who works here. Someone disappeared here before you came. Be careful with the one who always smiles at you.
Before I could react, he walked away. That night, when I checked the security cameras, I saw someone else had appeared in the parking lot. A familiar figure was standing near my car. It was the store manager, Mr. Gary, someone I had always thought was kind and trustworthy. The police caught Gary red-handed placing a tracking device on my car. It turned out he was dangerous, having been watching and abducting women in the town. He used his job at the store to pick out easy targets. The strange man, whom I had feared, was the one who had noticed the odd behavior and tried to warn me. Through the police investigation, I learned that the strange man had been falsely accused in a similar case before. He had tried to report it to the police, but was ignored. Since then, he had acted alone, monitoring and warning people he believed were in danger. After the incident, I decided to quit my job at the store. One afternoon, while packing up my things, I received an anonymous letter in my mailbox. "Thank you for trusting me. Don't stop being vigilant." I never saw him again. But every time I think back to those nights working at the store, I wonder, if he hadn't shown up, would I still be here to tell this story? That evening, while cleaning my room, I turned on the TV and caught the news about the women who had been rescued in town. The police confirmed that Gary's arrest had dismantled a dangerous network, saving many lives before they became victims. I learned a big lesson. I never paid attention to the small details before. Now I understand that sometimes the smallest things can save your life. My story ends with safety, but the mental scars from those terrifying nights continue to remind me. Never ignore your feelings of unease. It might save your life.
Grandma, it's Bella. My stomach hurts so much. And my little sister Cece, He's wearing a diaper. The space was dark, and in front of me were the images of my two adorable granddaughters. But the two sisters were not okay. Their bodies were covered in a thick layer of greasy oil, and oil kept oozing out from their noses and mouths. Bella, the older one, had a swollen belly and kept crying out in pain, while little Cece, still in her diaper, looked at me and smiled. I wanted to run toward them, but as I got closer, all that was left were puddles of oil spreading across the ground. "Mom, it's me, Shannon," my daughter's voice echoed from behind me. I quickly turned around and burst into tears. It was indeed Shannon. She was holding a little boy in her arms. "This is your grandson, Mom. I brought him to meet you and say goodbye. I love you, Mom." "Shannon!" I screamed, sitting up abruptly, only to find myself surrounded by darkness. My husband quickly turned on the nightlight. "Did you have another nightmare?" "I saw Shannon. The baby in her belly is a boy, darling." I clung to my husband and burst into tears. My husband and I are both over 60 years old, dreaming of a peaceful old age, surrounded by our children and grandchildren. My daughter Shannon is married and has two daughters, Bella, who is 4 years old, and Cece, who is 2. 2 months ago, she announced that she was pregnant with her third child, and our family was overjoyed. It seemed like our happiness had reached its peak, but then it only passed through without staying. My daughter, who was 4 months pregnant, went missing, along with my two granddaughters, Bella and Cece. If anyone knows where my wife and children are, please bring them back. Shannon, I miss you and the kids so much. That's what my son-in-law, Chris, said in the news report this morning. He was very worried and devastated by the news of his wife and children's disappearance. In reality, my husband and I did not support our daughter's marriage to Chris. But after many years of seeing our daughter happy with her small family, and with our two adorable granddaughters being well raised, my husband and I began to see things differently. The police search was expanded, and the many days of waiting for news about my daughter and two granddaughters were the longest of my life. My husband and I went to church every day, praying that everything would pass quickly, that our daughter had left due to stress for just a few days and would come back soon. But God did not hear our prayers. He was silent, cold, and took away my daughter and my 3 poor grandchildren. On the 3rd afternoon of the disappearance, the police contacted my husband and me. With the help of a drone equipped with a camera, the police discovered a piece of bed sheet at an oil field construction site. I immediately recognized it. It was the bed sheet set I had given my daughter. The pattern on the piece of sheet found matched the one on the pillow that had been discarded at Shannon's house. The oil field construction site was where my son-in-law Chris worked. He was arrested that very night on suspicion of murder. I hugged my husband and burst into tears. This can't be true. Our daughter is still alive. Her family is so happy, right? There was nothing we could do but wait. Yet what we received in return was an unbearable pain, one that cannot be soothed by anything. After the day the bed sheet was found at the oil field site, the police discovered my daughter Shannon's body, buried in a shallow, hastily dug grave, and my 2 granddaughters were found inside an oil drum. All of this cruelty was carried out by the very hands of the man my daughter called her husband, and the man my grandchildren called their father. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't scream, and I couldn't feel more desperate. My daughter and grandchildren, they were murdered in the most agonizing way. Chris claimed that the reason he committed his horrific crime was simply because of a momentary fit of anger. While Chris and Shannon were arguing, he had proposed a divorce. In anger, my daughter threatened him, saying he would never see their 2 daughters again. That bastard used his hands to suffocate Shannon while she was pregnant. Then he went into the room and did the same to my little granddaughter Cece, while my older granddaughter Bella watched. Chris moved the bodies of Shannon, Cece, and Bella to the oil-filled construction site to bury his crimes. Bella, my poor granddaughter, had been sitting with the bodies of her mother and little sister. Am I going to end up like Cece too? That's right. Dad, please don't do this. My heart felt like it was being squeezed, ready to explode when I heard my granddaughter's last words. At the trial, my husband and I faced a monster who had taken the most precious things from our lives. We entrusted our daughter and grandchildren to you to care for and love, not to take their lives. A life sentence is far too lenient for the horrific crimes you've committed, my husband said in court. That was the final respect we gave to someone who had once called us parents. In the end, the ones who remain are the ones who bear the deepest pain and wounds. My daughter and grandchildren can never come back, and it will always stay that way. This story is based on a real-life shocking case that rocked the United States in 2018. Chris Watts, the beloved father, turned into a devil when he brutally murdered his pregnant wife and 2 daughters. A happy family with warm moments shared by Shannon, Chris's wife, on social media, but beneath it all lay horrific tragedies waiting to erupt. The root of the tragedy stemmed from the conflicts between Shannon and her in-law parents, compounded by Chris's betrayal as he secretly had an affair with a coworker. The monster has had to pay the price for his actions for the rest of his life, locked away in solitary confinement. But no psychologist has been able to fully decode the mindset of Chris Watts when he committed such horrific acts. The dream of many men around the world is to have a happy family, a good wife, and well-behaved children. Chris Watts once had it all, but he threw it all away with his own hands. I'm Robert, and my twin sister is Laura. Our family of 4 lives in a mobile home. We move every day along the roads through towns, cities, and states. My parents always choose empty lots or wooded areas for the family to spend the night. My sibling and I didn't attend school like other children. Instead, we followed an online program. It may sound deprived and unfortunate, but my family was still very happy for 13 years. One evening, after our parents went to sleep, my sibling and I snuck into the forest to play. Because we spent 90% of our time in the van, we were very curious about everything around us. Laura clutched the hem of her shirt tightly, following closely behind as I held the flashlight to light our way. The sudden rustling sounds of leaves being disturbed startled us. We stood frozen for a moment until a growling sound signaled the approach of a large and terrifying creature. I grabbed Laura's hand tightly and ran with all my strength without looking back. Miraculously, my sister and I made it back into the house safely without our parents noticing. We absolutely kept that secret from our parents. The mobile life of the family continued as usual. One day, I told my parents during dinner that I wanted to settle down somewhere. I want to go to school, have more friends, and sleep on a big bed in my own room. My parents looked at me silent for a long time. Do you still remember what happened when the 2 of you were just 4 years old? Mom asked gently. We don't want that to happen again. We won't be able to live if we lose you two. When my twin sister and I were 4 years old, while the family stopped to play at a park, we almost got kidnapped by a man. Since that incident, our parents have been more vigilant about us, and rules were established for us. Laura didn't say anything, although I knew she also shared the same desire as I did. I remained silent, although I was not satisfied or comfortable. Several months passed with our mobile life until my sibling and I were about to celebrate our 15th birthday. That day, my parents parked the car in an empty lot and instructed my sibling and me to stay put in the car until they returned. Laura tidied up the car to decorate for the birthday, while I lounged on the bed with my gaming console. A moment later, Laura called me urgently. "Robert, come here quickly." Laura was sitting next to an old box with some papers in her hands. The box was something my dad used to prop up the driver's seat every day, and I thought the papers were just some kind of advertisements. But Laura handed them to me with a very serious expression. That was our birth certificate, but our parents' names were Owen Taylor and Anna Taylor, while our current parents are Maria and Louis. There were also a few old newspapers. June 13, 2000. A case of 2 missing twin children under 6 months old received significant attention. November 20th, 2000. The mother of the 2 children, after months of desperately searching for her kids, went insane. The father did not give up. He was willing to pay any price and do whatever it took to find his children. April 4th, 2004. The father, after many years of searching, accidentally encountered the 2 children in a park. With the identifying features, he was certain they were his 2 children. However, the kidnappers attacked him and took them away. Once again, the man fell into despair as he lost his children for the second time. There is a hand-drawn sketch of the 2 kidnappers in the article, and it's shocking how much it resembles our current parents by about 70%. An article also included a letter that the father wrote to his 2 children. "Dear Robert and Laura, my beloved children, I don't know where you are right now, but remember that your parents always love you. I will try to find you and bring you back, so please stay healthy." I looked at Laura. Her eyes were red and her body trembled from shock. I didn't think much, grabbing Laura's hand, and ran out of the car, running fast and far to a police station to ask for help. We were kept at the police station for our safety. Laura couldn't stop crying. I knew she was very scared. That very night, a man came to the police station. He looked at us for a long time before kneeling down and bursting into tears. He was our biological father. Our adoptive parents were wanted and captured 2 days later after going into hiding. It was difficult, with feelings of guilt and regret, as we had reported the people who had taken care of us for 15 years. But according to the police, we would soon have been sold by that couple as valuable goods. My brother and I were taken back to our hometown in Ohio, living in the spacious house we had long dreamed of. Although there are still distances and unfamiliarity, we will gradually adjust because we know that this place truly has the love of family. I'm Steven. I live in Houston. Just signed the papers to pay for a car with my tiny office salary. Not trying to brag or anything, but it's a horror story that made me swear off public transportation for good. That night, on the last bus from work to my place, I grabbed the seat in the back row. It was just me, some girl, and the driver on the bus at that point. I leaned back, shut my eyes, and just tried to relax. It took me almost an hour to get home. The girl, annoyed, told the driver, "You can skip the empty stops. It'll save time. I gotta be home in 15 minutes." I noticed she looked like she was still in school. With all that heavy makeup and colorful clothes, she probably just came from a party. The driver replied slowly, "Chill, girl, I'm just following the rules." "But your rules ain't gonna help me dodge my parents finding out." The driver laughed and was like, "This last bus ain't just for people. It's got other stuff too." That caught me off guard a bit. The girl rolled her eyes, plopped back in her seat, and started scrolling on her phone. I closed my eyes, leaned back, and tried to rest. I was exhausted, but I just couldn't fall asleep. A while later, when the bus stopped, a cold wind hit, and it made me shiver. I looked around and realized I was the only one on the bus. No one got on the bus at this stop. I zipped up my jacket, shoved my hands in my pockets, and curled up. "Why is it so cold?" I mumbled. I checked the clock and it was already past 11, just about 30 minutes till I got home. I pulled out the book I was reading to kill some time. I turned the page, then looked up by accident and saw a girl sitting near the door in a red sweater with long, messy brown hair. Clearly, that girl wasn't there a minute ago. I looked out at the street and there was no bus stop around here. When did she even get on? No way. This can't be the high school girl who just ran away from home. Whatever. I went back to reading. The second time I looked up, it kind of seemed like the girl was sitting closer to me, but I wasn't sure. She was sitting up straight and didn't seem to budge. I kept reading, but I couldn't focus. The air in the bus was getting colder, and I started shivering. After a few minutes of trying to focus, I looked up at the girl in the red shirt again. She was sitting way closer to me, like just 2 rows away. My heart started racing, and I felt this weird shortness of breath. I tried to shake off the bad thoughts by keeping on reading, gripping the book tight. The light on the page faded, and a dark shadow took over. That girl, she was right in front of me, but she moved without making a sound. I started gasping and slowly looked up. She was still sitting up straight, but the sweater wasn't red. It was soaked in some red stuff that smelled fishy. Before I could even react, the girl gently pushed her hair back with both hands. She pushed her hair back, and behind it, a messed up face stared at me, and she started giggling. I just mumbled some sounds, took a few more seconds, then finally screamed, letting all the horror out. When I ran out of breath, I took another one and screamed again. I kept doing that until something hard smacked my head. "What's wrong with you?" I opened my eyes, and it was that girl from earlier, holding a school bag. She was staring at me like she was judging me. I was freaking out, looking all around the bus like, "The girl in red, the girl with long hair." I kept saying it, about to lose it. I bolted off the bus, stood at the stop, and gasped for air. The bus took off, and in my seat, I saw the back of a girl in red, sitting up straight. I couldn't take it anymore and just collapsed, trying to figure out where I was. It was a stop close to my place, so I jumped up and ran home, my hands shaking as I tried to open the door. I never went near that bus stop again, and I never told anyone about that creepy experience. No one would believe this, but I'm sure the stuff I felt was real as heck. I'm Bretta, and I work as a nurse at one of the local hospitals. My husband Ben and I split up 18 years ago and still haven't gotten around to filing for divorce. We don't have kids or any stuff to split. Honestly, this marriage was never a happy one. I kept trying to patch things up, but Ben just kept making it worse. But that doesn't even begin to cover the story of that devil in disguise. He was the one who plotted to take me out and get his hands on the house I'm living in now, which is worth 300 grand. I texted Ven, asking if he could swing by in a few days while I was on vacation to look after my cat. Ven didn't text back, so I tried calling, but he didn't pick up. When I got back from the salon, I spotted a note stuck to the microwave. Didn't sleep well, so I'm heading to the beach for a few days. Ven's note. He was just saying no, but whatever. It wasn't a big deal to me. After tidying up the kitchen a bit, I headed up to the bedroom and got this weird feeling something was off. The room looked a bit dimmer than usual, so I glanced around and saw the curtains were shut. No way I did that. I've been opening those curtains every single morning for years, like clockwork. I went in to open the curtains, and out of nowhere, a man showed up. My first thing that caught my eye was the long-handled hammer he was holding. He was about 6 feet tall, wearing a baseball cap and some yellow gloves. He didn't give me a chance to react. He lunged at me and hit me like a maniac with that weapon in his hand. First hit from the hammer landed on my shoulder and right arm while I was trying to defend myself. My survival instinct kicked in right away, and I realized I had to fight back. I started scratching and biting, thinking I had to leave as many marks on him as I could for police to find the guy later. There was no way I could match his strength, especially since he was almost twice my height. But actually, my big body at the time came in pretty handy. Using my size to my advantage, I charged at him, but that first hit didn't really do much. The man just staggered for a second and didn't go down. "You're so strong," he said, and that fired me up to fight back and protect my life. I charged at him again, using my whole body to take control of the intruder. This time I got it right. I seized the chance to grab the hammer from his hand and hit him back. "Who are you? Who sent you?" I yelled, but the intruder was out cold from the last hit. I bolted outside, screaming to get attention, and asked the neighbors to call the police. I went back inside to deal with the other guy, and once again, faced the harsh reality of human nature. He came to and jumped right back into attacking me like before. I've been a nurse for 30 years, and during that time, we've done a ton of self-defense classes to handle tough patients. Using my size and skills from work, I overpowered him again. I climbed on top of him and used a judo air choke, completely taking him down. "Who sent you here? Just tell me, and I'll let you go and call an ambulance." But he still wouldn't say anything, and his stiff body slowly relaxed and stopped breathing. At that point, the police showed up, and I still couldn't shake the fact that I'd just gone toe-to-toe with the death. The police did their thing and figured out that the intruder was Aiden Knight, a man with a long rap sheet for stealing. The police first thought it was just a regular break-in, but then they realized there weren't any valuables taken from the house. The bag Aiden Knight left in my basement was the proof that nailed the whole thing down. I found the bag when I decided to crash at my friend's place after that crazy incident. Inside the bag was $200 in cash, a diary, some meds, and a paycheck. It's worth mentioning that the check was from the company my husband then worked for. The police didn't take long to figure everything out and piece the whole story together. Ven fessed up to all his crimes, saying he wanted to inherit the house worth $300,000 after I kicked the bucket. I cried, feeling really sorry for myself. Living with a controlling and selfish husband for 18 years, he was totally grossed out when he saw how much I had changed. That's why we never had kids. But I tried a bunch of times to fix our relationship and never blamed him. Ven got sentenced to 10 years in prison, and I filed a lawsuit for $1 million to make sure he wouldn't have a dime left to hire someone to try and take me out again. Ven died 3 months before his prison term was up, and honestly, it was a huge relief for me. I didn't even bother to change the lock on the house. It was still set to the day Ven and I got married. But in the end, all my love, sacrifice, and patience were totally wasted. This whole story is totally based on something that really happened back in 2006. The main characters are this couple, Susan Walters and Mike Kuhnhausen. Susan used to think that marrying Mike was the best decision she ever made. But after 18 years, their marriage hit a dead end they just couldn't fix. Susan decided to divorce, but Mike wasn't having it. He even cooked up a cruel plan to hire one of his old work buddies to take her out. In the end, justice was served. Mike got what was coming to him, but Susan's mental scars just couldn't be healed.
Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you turn to these videos as a gentle way to unwind and ease into sleep. So before you drift off tonight, could you help me with a small favor? Just leave a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. My goal is to hit around 200 likes within the first 24 hours. Simple actions like these help YouTube appreciate the content and spread the show to more people. Now then, let's dive into tonight's horror stories. A few months ago, I would have thought that stopping my car in the rain was just a kind gesture. But just a few hours later, I realized I had invited the man who wanted to kill me into my home. The story began a few months ago. I had just driven away from Mountain View Cemetery in Fremont, California. I would have stayed longer, but I noticed it was about to rain. I drove for a while, and it started pouring. As my car went around a bend, I saw a figure on the side of the road. It was a man, waving for a ride. He was shivering from the cold. He must have been standing there for a long time. I slowed down and pulled over. He quickly ran over and opened the car door, soaking the seat with rainwater. He had a thin face, a bushy beard, deep-set eyes, and looked like he hadn't slept in days. I handed him a towel to dry off. He nodded in thanks and took it. I started driving again. Throughout the trip, I tried to make some small talk, asking where he was from or what he did for work, but I only got shakes of his head or short answers. He just kept staring out the window, his hands tightly clasped together. As we neared my house, I asked, "I'm almost home. Where do you want me to drop you off?" He turned to look at me, his eyes looking tired. "Could you let me come in and rest for a bit? I've been walking all day." I hesitated. I never take strangers home, but it was still raining hard and he looked genuinely exhausted. "Okay, but I can only let you stay for a little while." When we got inside, I showed him a seat in the living room and went to get him a set of old clothes to change into. Then I went to the kitchen to make a hot cup of tea. While waiting for the water to boil, I remembered his face. There was something familiar about it, as if I had seen him somewhere before, but I couldn't place it. "I forgot to ask your name," I called out, but there was no answer. I peeked into the living room. No one was there. I turned off the stove and went out. The chair was still wet from his clothes, but he was gone. Confused, I walked around the house, calling out to him. I went upstairs. The bathroom was empty. The office was empty. Finally, I stopped in front of the bedroom door. The door was ajar, even though I was sure I had closed it earlier. I pushed the door open and froze. He was standing in front of the vanity, holding a picture frame that I always kept there. It was a photo of Mary and me. There were other pictures of her on the table. "You loved her so much?" His voice had completely changed. It was cold and full of hatred. He turned around, and we looked at each other closely, and then the memory flooded back. Gary Williams, Mary's ex-husband. He looked like a different person, but he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He should be in jail. "Gary?" How are you? I whispered. Surprised, Dave? You thought I'd sit in prison for 20 years? I took a deep breath. I didn't steal Mary from you. When we started, you two were almost done with the divorce. What the hell is a divorce? She was still my wife. You had an affair with her, you bastard, he roared. Gary pulled a knife from his jacket. Now it's your turn. He lunged, and a struggle began. The blade cut through my right shoulder, showing the white bone through the deep wound, and blood started gushing out. Gary became more aggressive and continued to attack. At that moment, I had no other choice. I lunged toward the wardrobe, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a gun, my hand shaking as I released the safety catch. I pulled the trigger. The first shot hit his shoulder, and he still advanced. I pulled the trigger again. The second shot hit his chest. Gary stopped, then crumpled to the floor. I checked his pulse. Gary was dead. I was silent for a few minutes, then called the police to turn myself in. Gary Williams escaped from prison 3 days ago. He killed a guard during his escape. We were hunting for him, an officer told me. The trial took place a month later. I was fully acquitted. The judge confirmed that I had acted in legal self-defense. I didn't feel happy, but I felt incredibly relieved. Right after the trial, I went back to the cemetery to visit Mary. The California afternoon sun peeked through the clouds. I knelt before Mary's grave and placed a bouquet of white roses, her favorite flower. I told Mary what had happened and then burst into tears. It had been almost 2 years since I lost her. If I had been more decisive that day, not letting her go to meet her cruel ex-husband, Gary, we might have had a happy family with children. A light breeze blew through the cemetery, causing dry leaves to fly up and then fall onto her grave. I sat there until it got dark. On the way home, I didn't stop for anyone else. If I had been more careful when choosing a place to live that day, I probably wouldn't have woken up on an operating table. It started 3 months ago when I decided to leave Cleveland, Ohio. My job had fallen apart, and my rent was piling up. I needed a fresh start somewhere with a lower cost of living. Dayton seemed like a good fit. It was a quiet city, and still in the same state, so I could visit family. The first thing I needed to do was find a place to live. I scrolled through apartment and rental pages, and most of them were out of my reach. Then I saw a post looking for a roommate. It was a 2-bedroom apartment on Oak Street, near downtown, with a rent that was half the average price. The apartment currently had one occupant, a guy named Vince, who made the post. We exchanged a few simple messages, and I quickly moved in with him. On moving day, I parked my rental truck in front of a 3-story red brick building. The apartment was on the 2nd floor. Vince opened the door after the first knock. He was tall and thin with long brown hair that almost covered his eyes. The first thing that struck me was Vince's unusually wide smile. His voice was a little high-pitched and slightly shaky. His hand was cold and clammy when we shook hands. Vince didn't say much about himself, and I was hesitant to ask. The apartment was bigger than I expected. A large living room with a window overlooking the street. The kitchen was small but functional. My bedroom had a single bed and a wardrobe. There was a faint, musty, foul smell. I figured it was because the room hadn't been used. The first few days passed quite peacefully. I worked the afternoon and evening shift at a restaurant near downtown, usually getting home around 11 p.m. Vince was usually in his room with the door closed. The musty, foul odor I noticed at first didn't go away. It became more and more pronounced. I opened the windows and lit scented candles, but it didn't help. The smell was especially strong near Vince's room. On a day off when Vince was also home, I couldn't stand the smell anymore, so I asked him about it. Vince, who was in the kitchen, turned back with that familiar smile and explained that he was working on a dissection research project on small animals, like rats and birds. He wanted to understand their internal structure. Better rats than people, right? Vince chuckled softly and walked into his room. I stood there watching him go, thinking my roommate was incredibly strange. After living with Vince for almost a month, I decided to find another place. I had saved enough money for a security deposit. I told Vince about it, and he didn't say anything, but he did mention he was going home to visit his family that weekend. I figured he wasn't happy about me moving out, so I just kept quiet. I breathed a sigh of relief, finally getting a quiet night to myself. That evening, as I was sitting on the sofa, I was startled by a sound at the front door. I turned off the TV and listened. It was a key turning in the lock. Maybe Vince had come home early. I stood up, ready to greet him. The door opened, but instead of Vince, I saw a tall, dark figure in a hoodie, his face covered by a white mask. Before I could react, he lunged. I tried to run to the kitchen, but my foot caught the edge of the table, and I tumbled to the floor. In the next second, a strong blow to my head sent me into darkness. When I woke up, I found myself tied tightly to a metal table. I was in a small room with no windows, lit by a single overhead bulb. The concrete walls were bare and damp. The stench was so overwhelming it made me want to throw up. Around the table were metal shelves full of glass jars. Inside were dark brown fragments, suspended in a clear fluid. On another table, I saw surgical tools, scalpels, pliers, scissors. My mouth was taped shut, leaving me to only make muffled sounds of helplessness. From a dark corner, a voice began to hum a sweet melody that, in this context, was horrifying. The singer emerged from the shadows and walked closer. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Vince with his familiar smile. But this time, it was more grotesque, with wide, bulging eyes filled with a look of sheer delight. Better people than rats, right, Mike? Without a word, he picked up a folding knife from the tool table and opened it. Vince placed the tip of the blade on the skin of my stomach. I tensed, struggling in desperation. The blade began to cut into my skin, and a searing pain hit me, feeling the warm blood ooze out. I was helpless, and so desperate I started to cry. Suddenly, I felt the rope on my right wrist loosen slightly, probably because I was sweating so much. I tried to twist my wrist. Vince had turned away to grab a tool, mumbling something about a perfect specimen. After a few minutes of struggling, my right hand finally came free. I immediately sat up, grabbed a knife from the tool table, and stabbed him in the shoulder. Vince screamed, stumbling backward, clutching his shoulder. He became enraged at the sight of his own blood, yelling hysterically. I quickly untied myself and ran. After I got out, I realized that the horror room was Vince's bedroom. I pressed hard on the wound to stop the bleeding, staggering down the deserted street. I saw a light at a nearby house and crawled toward it. I pounded on the door. A middle-aged woman opened it. She was in a panic when she saw my state. "Please, call the police." I managed to give her my apartment address before collapsing. I woke up in the hospital. A police detective was sitting next to my bed. He told me Vince had been arrested. In the basement, they found more than 20 glass jars containing body parts. Not just from animals. They believed some were human, as they also found photos. Some of them were of victims who had gone missing several years ago. According to forensic reports and medical records, Vince had been diagnosed with paranoid disorder and dissociative personality disorder, but he had never followed through with treatment. He was reclusive, rarely socialized, and had a tendency to become obsessed with human anatomy and controlling others' bodies. The untreated mental illness was the cause of his insane behavior and horrifying crimes. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. My wound wasn't deep, but I lost a lot of blood and needed time to recover psychologically. After being discharged, I found a new place to live. This time, I was much more careful. I met the landlord in person, checked all the paperwork, and talked to the neighbors before making a decision. Vincent Miller was sentenced to life in prison without parole. During the trial, he still had that grotesque smile, as if the whole thing was just an interesting game. I know I was lucky. lucky that I didn't become the next living specimen in his horrifying collection. When promises of love turn into a nightmare, I'm forced to fight to regain my life and control. I'm Beth, 32 years old. This story happened when I was living in Akron, Ohio. I had a very romantic time dating Kane. He was an engineer at a local company, had a steady income, and was polite to everyone. Kane proposed after 6 months of dating, and I immediately said yes. The first month of our marriage was truly like a paradise. Kane always took care of me, cooked and cleaned the house. He would often hug me from behind and whisper, "You're everything I need." I felt safe in his arms, believing we would grow old together in our small house in the Cleveland suburbs. Everything changed in the second month of our marriage. I woke up with a start to find Kane sitting on a chair next to the bed, holding a small pair of scissors. Scattered on the bed were strands of blonde hair. I immediately sat up. It was my hair. "Kane?" I asked, my voice trembling, my hands instinctively going to my head. One side of my hair had been cut short, close to the scalp. "Good morning, my love," Kane said, staring at me without blinking. "I've been sitting here all night watching you sleep. You sleep so beautifully, especially when I'm cutting your hair." "Why did you do that?" I almost screamed, my voice cracking as I was about to cry. Kane grinned, waving the scissors in his hand. "You look so much cuter now." "Now let's eat breakfast," Kane suddenly yelled. Before I could react, he shoved a large piece of bread into my mouth. I choked, trying to push his hand away, but Kane was stronger. He continued to force bread into my mouth. "Kane, stop!" I tried to yell through the bread, but the sound was just an unintelligible groan. I couldn't breathe. My strength was fading, and my vision began to blur. Kane continued with an expression of delight. The last sound I heard was his insane laughter before everything went dark. I woke up, squinting at the bright lights. I was in a hospital. My throat was sore and dry. Kane sat on the chair next to my bed, his shoulders shaking. "Kane!" I thought he was crying until I saw his face. Kane was smiling, his eyes sparkling like a child who had just received their favorite gift. "You're awake?" he said, feigning concern. "If you're unconscious for too long, I can't play with you anymore, my love." He leaned close to my ear. "Next time you feel like you're about to pass out, let me know in advance. I'll let you rest for a bit." I shivered at my husband's attitude. "Why? Why did you do that?" Kane was silent for a moment, his eyes staring at me. Then he grinned again. "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." I stared at Kane in disbelief. Was this really the man who had promised to protect me for the rest of my life? Why had he become like this? Just then, a doctor walked in and said the situation wasn't too serious, but still recommended I stay in the hospital for another night for observation. Kane immediately stood up and squeezed my shoulder tightly. "That's not necessary, doctor. My wife is fine. We're going home." Before I could say anything, Kane pulled me out of the hospital. The next few days were hell on earth. Kane no longer hid his true nature. Every morning I woke up, I didn't know what he would do. One time, he put a lot of salt in a glass and made me drink it all. Another time, he tied me to a chair and dripped cold water on my head for an hour. I tried to escape multiple times, but Kane always found me and dragged me back. He locked all the doors, hid the keys and my phone, and was always by my side to monitor me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I cried and threatened to call the police. Kane jumped up, his eyes bloodshot, and he yelled, "Shut up. Do you know how happy I am? Don't ruin my mood." In the next second, he calmed down, gently hugged me, and leaned close to my ear. His breath sent a shiver down my spine. "Thank you for agreeing to marry me. Now I can play with you however I want. I've thought of so many fun ways to spend every day with you." "Why?" I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. Kane licked a tear from the corner of my eye, his smile turning insane. You always smiled. I hated seeing that. From now on, I'll make you cry every day. Your tears are the most delicious thing to me. His insane laughter echoed through the room. I knew if I didn't act immediately, I would die in this house. I grabbed everything within reach, a table lamp, a wedding photo frame, a glass of water, and threw them hard at Kane's face. He staggered back, covering his face with his hands. That was my only chance. I ran to the window, opened it, and jumped out. It was my only option, because I was sure Kane had locked all the doors. Knowing the great risk, I jumped without a second thought. I landed on the first floor awning and then jumped again to the ground. The fall made me roll a few times, feeling pain all over my body. I heard Kane yelling for me to come back. There wasn't much time. I got up, limped to a neighbor's house, and asked for help. The neighbors called the police. I sobbed, telling the police everything, my body a clear and convincing piece of evidence. They immediately issued a temporary protective order and helped me with the divorce proceedings. The next month, I was treated in the hospital for a broken arm and shoulder and severe psychological trauma. At the trial, I wasn't present. I couldn't face Kane. Instead, I followed the trial online. It's a shame. I still have so many things I wanted to do with you. That was the only thing Kane said during the entire trial. I burst into tears, feeling utterly disgusted. What shocked me even more was that after the divorce, I found out Kane had been married before. His first wife had taken her own life. The police concluded it was depression, but the truth behind her death was probably also due to Kane's insanity and cruelty. Kane wasn't looking for a life partner. He was looking for a toy to satisfy his brutality. After 2 years of psychological therapy, I can finally sleep soundly without waking up with a start. I've moved to Columbus and started a new life. I understand that freedom and peace are the most precious things, but not in the arms of or dependent on someone else. They are within myself.
I'm Aiden, and I've just returned after more than 3 months of treatment for psychological trauma from a psychiatric hospital. The cause of everything started with the girlfriend I fell for at first sight, Agatha. She is 3 years older than me, a woman of extraordinary beauty who made it impossible for me to look away. She had large eyes, a small face, long, shiny blonde hair, and a perfectly proportioned figure. I don't know how many times I silently thanked God for meeting and having Agatha. Not only was Agatha beautiful, but she was also very friendly, kind, and an excellent cook. I really wanted to quickly organize a wedding with her and was incredibly excited, imagining our future daughter. But nothing is perfect. Agatha had a very strange and incomprehensible flaw. She always criticized her own body. I completely understood when a girl complained about being overweight or being unhappy with a certain part of her body. But with Agatha, it wasn't just insecurity. She hated herself. Agatha always used terrible words to describe herself, to the point where I imagined her as a monster. Agatha, you are the most beautiful woman. No, Aiden, look at me, she interrupted. These eyes, this nose, are so redundant and ugly. Even these feet, too. There are many people who are not as lucky and well off as us. Stop those silly thoughts. I'm serious. Seeing that my attitude was quite tense, Agatha stood up and left. I really love Agatha, but the more I love her, the more I can't understand her. Things won't be so scary when everything stops at words. Agatha gradually lives the role of a disabled person in a happy and enjoyable state of mind. She is no longer meticulous about her appearance, does not wear makeup or hair, Instead, her face is tightly attached to a pair of sunglasses. Agatha groped everything and asked for help from me because she thought she was blind. Furniture in the house is constantly falling apart and getting damaged. From surprise and helplessness, I gradually turned into discomfort and anger. But Agatha ignored everything. I was even more shocked when I read Agatha's search history. How to remove eyes quickly and with the least pain. Immediately, I pulled Agatha's hand into the dressing room, took off her sunglasses, and let her look straight into the mirror. Look! Why did you make yourself so pathetic? I continued to turn on my phone, which had a beautiful picture of Agatha as the wallpaper. Do you remember how beautiful you used to be? Agatha remained silent, staring into the mirror for a long time, and then slowly closed her eyes and groped her way out. I wanted to scream out loud. If I could, I'd love to see what on earth was going through that small mind of hers. In the following days, I tried to convince Agatha to see a doctor. I was sure my girlfriend was dealing with some kind of mental issue. Agatha would refuse to talk if I mentioned seeing a doctor, and she would even stop eating. I tried to handle it by inviting the doctor to our house, but she locked herself in her room and refused to meet with him. That evening, Agatha and I sat down to have a serious conversation with each other. I'll be going on a business trip for a week. Will you be okay? Of course. It is not the first time you've gone on a business trip, Aiden. Agatha, you know what I'm trying to talk about. Is that really your purpose in life? Agatha looked at me and remained silent. My purpose and dream is to have a happy family with you. I've always imagined a future where we have a daughter as beautiful as you. But Agatha, please, I interrupted her. Please, tell me what your real dream is. I wish I didn't have these eyes. My girlfriend's words felt like a heavy force tightening around my heart. I hate having to see everything, Aiden. I turned and walked into the office, and that entire night, I thought deeply about everything that happened. The next morning, I left the house early to go on my business trip. I left Agatha a handwritten letter asking both of us to reflect on everything and have another conversation when I returned. Throughout the week, I was on my business trip. There were no calls or messages from Agatha. I called her several times, but all I received were a few superficial words. I secretly installed cameras in the living room and bedroom without Agatha knowing. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to leave her alone. Agatha's crazy actions, pretending to be blind, continued to increase over time, which stressed me out immensely. My insomnia was also getting worse day by day. On the 5th night of my business trip, unable to sleep, I looked back at the happy photos of me and Agatha, and I cried. A notification came through from the camera app, and I immediately pressed to view it. The screen switched to the app interface, and Agatha's painful screams echoed loudly, causing me to jump up in shock. She didn't appear in the frame, but the sound of her screams and the chaotic scene in the room made me panic. Agatha! I kept shouting through the phone screen, my hands trembling as I adjusted the camera's view. Suddenly, Agatha sat up with a loud laugh. Her long hair was disheveled, her clothes were torn, and her face had deep, hollowed eyes from which a lot of blood was dripping. Agatha's hands were raised high, two objects that were difficult to define. They were round, slimy with liquid, constantly flowing down. Her laughter gradually lost control, becoming frantic and delighted. I threw my phone away and clutched my head, screaming loudly. After calming down a bit, I quickly picked up my phone and called the police. That very night, I booked the earliest flight to return and arrived home by 9 a.m. the next day. After consulting with the doctor, I learned that Agatha had body integrity identity disorder, a condition where she had a strong desire to remove a part of her body. I had been standing in front of the hospital room door for over an hour. Although I really wanted to go in, I didn't know how to face Agatha. Everything between us will probably end. Body integrity identity disorder is a rare psychological condition where the person affected feels that a part of their body does not belong to them and has an intense desire to remove it. In the United States, this syndrome has attracted the attention of the medical community and society in recent years. To date, the exact cause of BIID has not been clearly identified. Some patients with this condition in the United States: Jewel Shuping, self-inflicted drainage fluid into her eyes. From a young age, Jewel had hated seeing everything and tried to imagine how happy she would be if she were blind. Chloe Jennings, white, lives in a wheelchair and uses a clamp on her leg despite being perfectly healthy. This condition severely impacts the psychological and physical well-being of those affected, requiring further research to find an effective treatment method.
I'm Melvin, and I'm 17. I've lived with my grandparents and Aunt Sam since I was little, and I've never met my parents. I've always felt loved by my grandmother and Aunt Sam, but not by my grandfather. I feel like there's always been a gap between me and my grandfather that just can't be closed. He's never really shown me any words of care or loving gestures. When I was 10, I used to run home from the bus stop all excited. The sound of kids crying left me feeling really confused. When I walked into the living room, I saw my grandmother holding a baby wrapped in a blanket, and she was crying too. "Come here, Melvin. This is your little brother, Henry." I was really curious. As a 10-year-old, I had a lot of questions, like why I suddenly had a younger brother, and whether he was born by our mother, Carrie.
You're not allowed to ask questions that go against any instructions from adults.
My grandfather's voice sounded really annoyed when he heard my questions. Aunt Sam quickly pulled me over to see my brother, but I was in tears because I felt sorry for myself and didn't really feel anything for Henry. I stayed in the room that my grandmother said was my mom's room, and Henry stayed with my grandparents since he was too young. I asked my grandmother about my parents many times, but she just smiled with a red, tearful face. My grandmother always told me to keep the room just as it was, down to the smallest details. The picture showed a very young and beautiful woman, and my grandmother said that that was my mother, Carrie. I don't have any information about my father, and neither do my grandparents. I don't share many traits with my mother, but resemble my grandfather more, and I really don't like that. I've had insomnia since I was a kid, probably around 7 or 8 years old, because of all the different noises. Sometimes it was the laughter of kids, and other times it was the crying and scolding. I could never quite pinpoint where it was coming from. I told my grandmother everything because she always listened to me.
Stop making up stories and asking for things.
My grandfather's voice sounded annoyed when he overheard me telling my grandmother that the room needed better soundproofing. My grandmother didn't have much of a say in the house because she didn't work.
The whole family relied on my grandfather's salary for all the expenses. I saw my grandfather get angry with her many times, even throwing away the dinner she had just made because she mentioned my mother. She wanted him to spend some money to hire a detective to find my mother, Carrie. My grandfather didn't seem to care about my mother, so I could kind of understand why he didn't show much love for my siblings and me. Because I was really afraid of my grandfather and didn't want to cause any trouble for my grandmother, I tried to put up with those noises for many years. Sometimes, hearing the laughter of the kids made me laugh too. I also have a younger brother, Henry, but we always had to follow my grandfather's strict rules, so we were all pretty closed off. As I grew up, I always planned to visit my mother and ask her why she didn't bring my brothers and me along, or why she never came to visit us. One day, the family dinner took a serious turn when my grandfather announced that he was at risk of losing his job. At night, I heard the two adults arguing about money and some illness, along with the sound of a child crying. I put a pillow over my ears, but I couldn't block out the annoying noise. It sounds like it's Grandpa. I sat up and walked around the room, trying to find a spot where I could hear the noise as clearly as possible. The woman's scream was really loud, and then the argument stopped. I had a lot of doubt about the man's voice. For almost a week now, the noise I've been hearing every night is a mix of a child crying and a woman's soothing voice. Of course I can't sleep. The child's crying might mean they're uncomfortable or sick. I know this from seeing my grandmother take care of Henry when he was little. She gently held Henry, comforted him, and sang him a lullaby with a worried and tired expression. A noise that sounded like a door opening came from right outside. I quietly went to open the door, and it was my grandfather. He must be thirsty. I figured that since there was a bathroom in my grandparents' bedroom, he wouldn't use the one in the living room. I followed him down to the living room, and instead of turning right to go to the kitchen, my grandfather turned left. I kept a safe distance so he wouldn't notice me and kept following him. My grandfather went into the basement. I waited until he was inside, then I hurriedly followed him. But by the time I got to the basement, my grandfather had disappeared. I walked around looking for him but couldn't find him, and I started wondering if I was dreaming. I decided to sit in a hidden corner and wait, and eventually I fell asleep. The sound like a lock made me jump awake. I was surprised when my grandfather appeared out of nowhere and left the basement. I didn't tell my grandmother, but decided to keep an eye on my grandfather for a few more days. For the next 3 days, my grandfather didn't do anything out of the ordinary and didn't go to the basement again. I was tormented by the sound of a little girl crying and the woman's constant cursing. In her scolding and cursing, she mentioned Mark, my grandfather. I grew more and more curious about my grandfather and was sure he was hiding some kind of secret. On the 4th night, I saw my grandpa pulling back a shelf in the basement, and it opened up to another basement behind it. While I was still in shock, my grandpa led a woman holding a little girl, and they both ran out of the basement in a hurry. The woman's face looked a lot like my mom's. I didn't really react, and I'm not sure what I was feeling at that moment. I just stayed in that corner of the basement until the next morning. The police, along with my grandparents, Aunt Sam, and the woman who looked like my mom, came back. With the police urging him on, my grandpa reopened the door to the other basement. 4 more people came out one by one, all calling the woman Mom and my grandpa Dad. My grandmother immediately collapsed and gasped. I ran over to hug her, and everyone was surprised. The strange woman looked at me, burst into tears, and called my name. The whole truth about my parents, the two people I had been longing to see for 17 years, was finally revealed. The noises I heard every night were from my mom and my siblings, who had been living in a dark, cramped basement. My mom had been imprisoned for 24 years by her own father, someone I didn't know whether to call dad or grandpa. I had 7 siblings in total. It should have been 8, but one of them died because my mom was abused while she was 7 months pregnant. My grandfather took Henry and me upstairs because the basement was too cramped and told us that my mom had abandoned us. I can't forgive the person who committed this terrible crime, but he did create my 7 siblings. Mother Carrie endured extreme physical and mental pain. Even though she hated the person who took away her future and happiness, she always said that she loved and protected all of us at all costs. I love my mom and my other siblings a lot, for I'm the lucky one. I've decided to move on and live a new, happy life with my grandmother, Mother Carrie, Aunt Sam, and my 6 siblings. But I never stopped wondering why my grandfather did such horrible things to his own daughter. The story is based on a real-life event about the tragic life of a girl named Elizabeth Fritzl. Her real dad is Joseph Fritzl, a messed up, creepy guy. He started abusing his daughter Elizabeth when she was just 11. When Elizabeth was growing up, she tried to run away from her monster of a dad a bunch of times, but it never worked. For 7 years, starting when Elizabeth was 11, Joseph started working on turning the basement into a prison. On August 28, 1984, when Elizabeth was only 18, he drugged her and locked her up in the dark basement. He raped her every day, and after 24 years, Elizabeth had 7 kids with him, going through unimaginable pain and humiliation. In April 2008, Joseph finally let his oldest daughter, Kristen, who was really sick, go to the hospital. From there, the truth came out, and the whole world saw the face of a monster. "Dennis, where are you?" I yelled, feeling so worried and helpless, looking for my 6-year-old. It was Sunday, so I took my kid to the playground because I promised him if he got good grades. Every time I went to the playground, park, or supermarket, I ended up playing hide and seek, all annoyed. When I run out of patience, I'll just call the radio station to find the lost kid. "Dennis, you want to make this your last trip to the amusement park?" I was so mad when I found him at the toy counter. "Mom, check it out, Giant Mickey," my son shouted. He was standing next to this man who looked like he was around 6 feet tall. The person had on a Mickey Mouse mask, but it looked all weird and messed up, just black and white. The black clothes and his tall frame made him look really giant. I figured he was a toy store employee. Out of nowhere, he hoisted my kid up on his neck and posed for a pic. The boy was giggling and threw his hand up like Mickey. I snapped a quick pic, helped my kid down, said thanks, and then we bounced. Lately, the local police are on the hunt for a murderer. Nobody knows what he really looks like. All we know is he usually shows up wearing a messed up Mickey mask in all black. I was totally speechless when I heard the news that night. I compared the footage from the CCTV the news showed with the pics I took of my kid that morning, and I just lost it and started crying. I checked my kid to make sure he was all right. Then I called the police to report what happened. My husband's away on a business trip, and it freaks me out to think my kid and I ran into that murderer. Please keep us safe. I begged the police for help. After the police left, I tried calling my husband, but the line was busy. I sent him a pic of my kid with Mickey and a message about what was going on, hoping he'd wrap up his work and get home soon. I locked the door real careful and checked it again. Then I hit up the store to order 3 more CCTVs and set up a time for them to come install them tomorrow. Out of nowhere, I felt like the house was way too big for just the 2 of us, and there were so many places to hide. I think I gotta call the whole construction crew to switch up the layout of the house. I went up to Dennis's room, and he wasn't asleep yet. I could hear him giggling as I got close to the door. "What are you doing, Dennis?"
Mom, look.
I jumped and shouted loud. My kid was wearing a Mickey mask on his head and dancing around. I rushed over, yanked off the mask, and tossed it on the floor. "Who let you play with these gross things?" I shouted, my eyes wide and my finger pointing right at my kid's face. The boy looked scared and his eyes were starting to fill up with tears. Dennis ran to the bed and wrapped himself up in a blanket. I grabbed the mask and asked Dennis where it came from, like really urgently, but all I got back was my kid sobbing. I called the police back and handed them the mask. I couldn't calm down, and my body was shaking with every stutter. I asked the cops for a protective order, and they totally agreed right away. The whole week after that was just awful. My kid and I switched to online learning and working from home. Dennis wouldn't stop fussing and throwing tantrums because he felt cooped up, which was driving me as nuts as being strained by a 44-pound fishing line. My kid and I were getting more and more at odds and distant. He kept asking about the mask and wanted me to give it back. "Stop yelling and acting out, Dennis. You still haven't told me where you got that mask." "It's my secret," he yelled with all his stubbornness and bolted upstairs. I flopped down on the sofa, covering my face, feeling totally helpless. "Dana," my husband called out. He got back from his 3-month business trip. I ran over and hugged him tight, then just started crying. After chatting for a bit, my husband said he wanted to head upstairs to see our kid. A few minutes later, I went to Dennis's room and Mickey, the killer, was right in front of me with my kid on his neck. "Mom," Dennis waved, looking super happy. "I'm back," the killer said, sounding just like my husband. I'm Dylan, 38 years old. I work as a financial analyst for a bank in San Jose. I don't have a girlfriend, nor do I have plans for married life. I'm quite introverted and a workaholic. Instead of finding myself a girlfriend and having sweet dates, I often work late at the company, sometimes even until night. One Wednesday evening, I remember leaving the office at 11 p.m. That day I didn't drive to work. I stood in front of the company to catch a taxi. It's strange because this area usually has many taxis, but today I've been waiting for 20 minutes and still haven't seen any passing by. After a stressful day at work, I'm tired and starting to lose patience. It's almost 11:30 p.m. and a taxi suddenly arrives. I can't wait any longer and jump onto the road to flag down the vehicle. The taxi driver looks at me with panic, probably because of my somewhat crazy actions. The driver looks at me and then looks over to the passenger seat, appearing very panicked and worried. I glance over to the passenger seat, and it turns out this taxi already has a passenger. It's a girl. She's leaning her head against the window, seeming either drunk or quite tired. The taxi driver lowers the window, wearing a black face mask. He looks at me with concern. "Sorry, sir, I already have a passenger," he says. I'm too tired to wait for another taxi. I suggest that the driver lets me ride along, and he can drop off the girl first to maintain the order of the taxi call. He looks worriedly at the girl for a long time before turning to me. When I offer to pay double the fare, he reluctantly agrees. Getting into the car, I smell a strong smell of alcohol, so the girl must be drunk. The driver asks for my home address. He says that my house is closer than the girl's, so he'll drop me off first. I thank him. Out of appreciation, I engage in conversation and ask for her name, but he doesn't answer. I assume he's tired, so I keep quiet. I'm a bit curious, so I observe the girl. She looks quite young, probably in her early 20s. Her skin is pale, and her long hair covers most of her face. Despite the hot weather, she's wearing a high-neck sweater. The car suddenly brakes hard, and everything lurches forward. The driver says there was a cat crossing the road. I hear the girl's head bump against the car quite hard, but she doesn't react, still deeply asleep. I want to help her sit up straight, but the driver immediately refuses. He uses one hand to awkwardly adjust her sitting position. After a while, I suddenly smell a strong odor. I'm not sure, the smell of alcohol is still very strong. I look out realizing we're almost home, so I proactively pay the taxi fare. When I say I want to pay through the ride-hailing app, the driver immediately refuses, saying I should pay in cash. I don't have enough cash, so I hope he'll pass by the nearest ATM. The driver suddenly shows annoyance, urging me to hurry up. I withdraw money as quickly as possible. When I return to the car, I accidentally catch a glimpse of the girl's pale face sitting in the passenger seat. I freeze for a few seconds, wanting to observe her more closely. Surprisingly, I catch the cold gaze of the driver. I quickly get into the car and pay the taxi fare. The amount I give him is quite large, and I request change, but he refuses, saying he doesn't have any cash here. The more the driver gives me a sense of unease. Finally, I arrive home. It's almost 1 a.m. As I get out of the car before I can close the door, the taxi speeds away. Entering the house, images of that girl and the driver keep appearing in my mind. After showering, I go upstairs and fall asleep immediately. The next day is a day off, and I wake up quite late. I watch the news on TV, and they report a carjacking incident involving a taxi company. The driver of that taxi was repeatedly beaten on the head and died early this morning at the hospital. Along with that serious carjacking is the disappearance of a young girl named Alida. Putting everything together, I suddenly remember the taxi driver and the girl from last night. I will call the police to report everything I witnessed, but my phone has disappeared. I sit for a moment, trying to remember where I left it. On the taxi, I probably dropped it when I got out of the car. I call the police on the landline, recounting everything I witnessed. Using the GPS on my phone, the police quickly locate the stolen taxi. It's on an empty lot 40 kilometers away from the city. The car is running out of gas and both doors are wide open. Inside the car, on the passenger seat, the police discover blood soaked into the seat cushion and dried. About a week later, the police find the body of the missing girl under a tree, 10 kilometers from the location of the taxi. The girl's body has a long slash across her neck, which is the direct cause of her death. Through investigation, the police conclude that the girl found under the tree is the same girl in the taxi that I met that night. The driver's name was actually her terrible boyfriend impersonating. His name is Gary. After getting drunk, Gary brutally murdered his own girlfriend and tried to destroy the body. All evidence pointed to Gary being guilty, but the next challenge for the police was to find him. There were no clues left behind, and that murderer seemed to have vanished from this world. I am still shivered thinking about that night. I sat with the body of a girl with a brutal murderer for 30 minutes in the car.
I still clearly remember that day, a fall afternoon in the suburbs of Minnesota. The dry leaves scattered across the path leading to Mark's house, each step seeming to disturb the stillness of the air. The chill in the air carried the smell of earth and rotting wood, drifting on the wind. I pulled my coat tighter around me, feeling the wind slip through the collar, bringing a vague but uncomfortable sensation. Mark's house appeared before me, an old two-story wooden house, deeply reminiscent of 1970s America. The swing on the porch creaked in the wind, the peeling paint revealing the dark wood underneath. Every detail evoked a nostalgic yet slightly eerie feeling. Mark and I had many memories tied to this house. When we were kids, we would play in the garden or in the basement. I want you to help clean the basement. I think we might find some interesting stuff from when we were kids, Mark said. Those words sparked my curiosity because the basement had been the place we used to hide for hours, telling ghost stories and daring each other to walk through the darkness. But it had been a long time since any of us dared to mention it. We stood before the door leading to the basement. Mark's hand gripped the flashlight tightly, his eyes constantly scanning, as if he feared someone was watching. "That's the devil's domain," Mark said with a light laugh. But seeing the worried look on Mark's face, I knew the basement wasn't just a messy place. The wooden stairs creaked with every step. The flashlight's beam swept across the walls covered in cobwebs, revealing stains and patches of mildew. A musty smell filled the air, mixed with a foul stench, as if something was decaying. I held tightly to the railing, trying not to look down. The weak light from Mark's flashlight swept across a corner of the room, where a large wooden box was hidden in the shadows. The old box, its paint chipped away, looked as if it had been there for decades. Mark bent down, his hands trembling as he opened the box. A putrid, rotting smell wafted up, causing me to step back, my hand covering my mouth. In the dim light, I saw what was inside: animal carcasses, cats, mice, birds, stuffed into the box. Some were intact, but most had decayed, their fur matted together, and a dark brown, slimy liquid spilling from the sides of the box. My heart pounded, and a wave of nausea rose within me. Mark stood frozen, the flashlight in his hand flickering as if he too couldn't control it. "Isaiah," he whispered hoarsely, almost as if in disbelief. Isaiah, the 17-year-old boy with a cold face and empty eyes. He always kept his distance from everyone, lost in his own world. Mark told me that Isaiah liked to collect things that others threw away: old toys, bottle caps, and sometimes even stranger things. But this wasn't a hobby. This was something else. Mark confessed to me that he had once seen Isaiah kill a bird in his yard a few months ago. "I thought it was just a stupid prank," Mark said, his voice breaking. "But now, I'm not so sure." Mark's parents decided to send Isaiah for psychological treatment after finding strange drawings in his room, images of torn-up animals, twisted faces full of rage. I remember Isaiah's cold, challenging stare when he was taken away, as though he could see right through us. A month later, Mark called me. Isaiah had escaped from the treatment center. The police were notified, but every search attempt had been in vain. Soon after, strange things began happening in the area. Animals went missing, and their bodies were found in a state of brutal torture. The news spread throughout the town, but no one dared to speak Isaiah's name. One late evening, while driving past Mark's house, I saw a figure standing by the second-floor window. My heart stopped. It couldn't be Mark, and clearly, it was no one else but Isaiah. That night, I dreamed of Isaiah. He was standing at the foot of my bed, his deep eyes and cold smile on his lips. "Are you scared?" His voice echoed in my head. I shot up, my back drenched in sweat. Since then, I've never stopped feeling like I'm being watched. One evening, as I was heading home, I saw muddy footprints right in front of my living room window. I didn't dare to investigate further. Isaiah was still missing, and no one knew where he was. But I knew one day I'd see his name on the news, tied to a horrific crime. I am Claire Williams, 31 years old, the head chef at the Crimson, one of New York's most prestigious restaurants. I'm not arrogant, but I know I'm good. However, with my boss, Maxwell Reynolds, it seems like it's never enough. It's too bland, he complained after tasting the foie gras pâté I had just made. It needs something more unique. I nodded, suppressing my anger. This wasn't the first time I had endured Reynolds' criticisms, but this time it was different. In 2 weeks, the Crimson would host some of the most distinguished guests, executives, politicians, and a few Hollywood stars. This was my chance to prove my worth. I'll create a special menu, I promised. Dishes like never before. Reynolds looked at me with skepticism. Convince me. If your menu succeeds, you'll get $50,000. If it fails... He shrugged. I'm sure you don't want to know the consequences. My throat went dry. $50,000. I locked the door to my apartment and placed the ingredient bag down. Inside were the freshest items from the market, black truffles, foie gras, and rare herbs. But it wasn't enough. I needed something more special. I opened the old notebook, flipping through the yellowed pages. It was my grandmother's cookbook, a Romanian woman with ancient recipes. She had told me about the special dishes her ancestors used to prepare for sacrificial ceremonies. The secret to flavor lies in sacrifice, she once told me. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. I only knew that the meal that night was so delicious, I could never forget it. But as I grew older, as I began to truly touch the art of cooking, I gradually understood. To reach absolute perfection sometimes, a chef must sacrifice a part of themselves. The secret to flavor lies in sacrifice, she would whisper. I never fully understood the meaning of those words until now. With trembling fingers, I skimmed the pages until I found the recipe I needed. The Last Supper. The next 2 weeks, I locked myself in my apartment, only going out when I needed more ingredients. I experimented tirelessly. Each attempt brought me closer to perfection, but Reynolds was still not satisfied. Good, he admitted after tasting the 5th dish I presented, but still missing something. What is it? I nearly shouted. I've used the best ingredients, the most refined techniques. Reynolds smiled coldly. It's missing passion, Claire. You need to put your heart and soul into the dish. Heart and soul. I returned to my apartment, muttering those 2 words over and over. Perhaps that was what I needed. The day of the important dinner arrived. I arrived early at the Crimson, bringing a suitcase filled with my special ingredients. The kitchen was crowded with chefs and sous chefs, all busy preparing. Everyone out. I need space, and I'll do everything myself, I insisted. But Claire, we have so much to do. The sous chef protested. This is my menu. I'll do it my way. They looked at me in surprise, but no one dared to argue. Soon I was alone in the vast kitchen. I locked the door, opened my suitcase, and began to prepare. Today was special. Today I would create my masterpiece. The secret to flavor lies in sacrifice. A shiver ran through me as I felt the cold blade. I took a deep breath, trying to slow my racing heart. A clean, precise cut, delicate like the blade of a master craftsman. I clenched my teeth, feeling the muscle fibers separating, each small blood vessel leaking out hot, dark red liquid. The sensation was nothing like I had imagined. It was strangely satisfying. I looked down at the piece of meat I had just cut. It was perfect, tender, bright red, with perfectly interlaced fat lines. I couldn't stop. With the care of a master chef, I placed it on the cutting board, sprinkled a little sea salt and rosemary. The dizziness hit me, but I didn't care. This was the sacrifice I had to make. This was the essence of the art. I seasoned each piece with herbs from my grandmother's book, whispering ancient prayers. Blood dripped onto the floor, bringing me a thrill greater than ever. I was creating art with my own body. My heart and soul were blending into the dish. A knock on the door interrupted me as I was finishing the dessert. "Claire, the guests have arrived." Reynolds' voice echoed through the door. "They're ready to taste your menu." "5 more minutes," I replied weakly. I looked down at the completed plate of food. The starter was foie gras pâté with toasted bread. The main course was steak with a rich red sauce. And the dessert was pudding with a secret ingredient. I put on my crisp white chef's jacket and placed the dishes on the cart. A dizzying sensation hit me, but I pushed it aside. Nothing would stop me from completing my masterpiece. The banquet hall was filled with laughter and soft music as I pushed the cart out. Reynolds was chatting with a group of guests, a smug smile on his face. "Ah, here it is," he exclaimed when he saw me. "The special menu I promised." The servers took the dishes from the cart and served them to each guest. I stood silently in the dark corner, watching them taste the food. The first reaction was surprise. A woman in a red dress closed her eyes, savoring each flavor. An older man nodded in approval. One by one, they were all mesmerized by my dish. "Fantastic," Reynolds said loudly, raising his glass. "I've never tasted anything like this. The flavor, it's hard to describe." I smiled weakly. Blood was soaking through the bandages, but I didn't care. Only one thing mattered. I had succeeded. "We want to meet the chef," one guest exclaimed, and others joined in. "Chef! Chef!" Reynolds gestured for me to step into the spotlight. I stumbled forward, feeling my legs as heavy as lead. All eyes were on me. "This is Claire Williams," Reynolds introduced, patting my back, "the genius behind tonight's feast." The applause erupted. I bowed my head in thanks, struggling to keep my balance. "What ingredients did you use?" a woman asked. "I've never tasted anything like this." "It's a secret," I whispered, feeling the blood run down my legs. "A family recipe." Reynolds laughed. "Claire put her heart and soul into this dish," he joked, unaware of how right he was. I stumbled, almost falling. A server rushed to catch me. "Are you okay?" he asked, worried. "I'm fine," I said, but blood was starting to seep through my white chef's jacket. "Oh my God, you're hurt!" the woman in the red dress cried out, pointing at the spreading blood. The room fell silent. I felt my vision blur, but I still tried to smile. "This is my art," I whispered, barely audible. "I've sacrificed everything for the perfect dish." I slowly removed my chef's jacket, revealing my body covered in deep cuts, some still bleeding. Gasps filled the room. "Claire." Reynolds stepped back, his face pale. "What have you done?" "The secret to flavor," I whispered, "lies in sacrifice." Realizing the truth, one guest started to vomit. Others screamed. Panic spread as they realized what they had just eaten. But I just smiled. I had succeeded. I had created a dish they would never forget. A dish they would remember forever, even if they tried to forget it. "My $50,000, Reynolds?" I asked calmly amidst the chaos. "I've done what you asked." Reynolds looked at me horrified and disgusted. "A masterpiece," I whispered as I fell to the floor, blood pooling around me. "The perfect dish." As my consciousness faded, I heard the distant sound of ambulance sirens, but I knew they were too late. I had given too much of myself, and as darkness enveloped me, I smiled, because I knew I had created a dish that no one would ever forget, and a masterpiece that no one could surpass. Sometimes, to create greatness, one must be willing to give up everything, even themselves. I'm Logan, 37 years old. I'm driving to visit my daughter for our regularly scheduled visit once a month. She lives with her mother. My ex-wife and I have been divorced for 2 years. The highway, Interstate 95, heading north through New Hampshire, is deserted at night. I check my watch, 11:42 p.m. I expect to arrive around 6 a.m. Ahead of my car is a black sedan. As I get closer, my headlights illuminate the rear of the black sedan, and I notice one of the taillights is missing. A dangling white strip visible, looks like paint. Maybe the driver doesn't know their car has a problem. I accelerate, pulling up alongside the sedan. I lower my window, waving to get the driver's attention. It's a middle-aged man with a gaunt face. He turns to look at me with cold eyes. "Your taillight's out," I yell, hoping he can hear me over the wind and engine noise. Instead of a nod of thanks, he stares at me with a panicked expression, then abruptly swerves, cutting right in front of my car. I slam on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest. The sedan speeds off, quickly disappearing around a bend. That wasn't a normal reaction. Something was wrong. For a moment, I recall the look in that man's eyes, fear mixed with a brutal, crazed edge, the missing taillight, the streak of paint oozing from inside. I decide to follow the sedan, maintaining a safe distance so as not to be detected. My mind races through dozens of different scenarios. Maybe he's just some petty thief transporting illegal goods, or worse, drugs or weapons, or is someone locked in the trunk? Suddenly, as the sedan goes around a curve in my headlights, I see something protruding from the hole where the light should be. A human hand waving, as if signaling for help. I accelerate, trying to get closer. Yes, it's a hand. Probably a woman's or a child's. Without hesitating for another second, I grab my cell phone and call the police, my eyes still fixed on the sedan ahead. I think I just witnessed a kidnapping. I'm driving on Interstate 95, northbound, near the New Hampshire border. There's a black sedan, and from the taillight area, I saw a hand waving from inside. "Can you read the license plate number?" I try to get closer, but the driver of the sedan has noticed my presence. He suddenly turns onto a small road on the right, with no streetlights. I can't read the plate. It's too dark. But he just turned onto a dirt road. I'm going to follow. "Sir, you shouldn't do that. It could be a dangerous situation. Please wait for the police." But I can't wait. Someone is in danger. Every passing moment could be life or death for them. I turn onto the dirt road leading deep into the woods, dark and desolate. After about 5 minutes of driving on the dirt road, the sedan stops in a clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. I also stop my car about 100 yards back, turning off my headlights and engine. Through the dim moonlight, I can see the man get out of the car, look around cautiously, and then disappear into the trees. This is my chance. I open my car door, step out, and cautiously approach the sedan, carrying a small flashlight I always keep in my car. As I get closer, I can see the trunk and taillight area more clearly. I shine my flashlight into the hole and whisper, "Is anyone in there?" A moment of silence, then I hear a faint whisper, "Help me, please." It's a woman. "I'm going to get you out of there." "Are you hurt?" "No, but he'll be back soon. Please, hurry." I look around the car, searching for a way to open the trunk. I try the car doors, but as expected, they're locked. I consider smashing a window, but that would make too much noise. I go back to my car, open the trunk, and take out a lug wrench from my repair kit. Returning to the sedan, I carefully wrap the wrench in my jacket to muffle the sound, then smash the driver's side window. The sound of breaking glass startles me, even muffled by the jacket. I quickly open the car door, searching for the trunk release button, but just as the trunk pops open, I hear a noise behind me. I turn around and see the kidnapper standing there, just a few feet away. In his hand is a large hunting knife. "Who the hell are you? What are you doing with my car?" I grip the lug wrench tightly in my hand, knowing I have no other choice. "I know what you've done. The police are on their way. You should just surrender." He laughs, a cold, deranged sound. "You think you're a hero? What do you know about me? About what I've been through? She's my wife. She betrayed me. She deserves this. And then, like a predator, he lunges at me, the knife raised high. I sidestep, swinging the lug wrench up in defense, only the sound of his ragged breathing and the clanging of metal against metal filling the air. I need to end this quickly. As he comes at me again, I swing the wrench at his knife-wielding arm. I hear a sickening crack, and the knife falls to the ground, but he doesn't stop. Fueled by pain and rage, he tackles me, knocking me to the ground. We struggle, him trying to reach the fallen knife, me trying to push him off. During the struggle, I feel a sharp pain in my side. He stabbed me. With all my remaining strength, I shove him off and swing the lug wrench again, this time aiming for his head. A sickening thud echoes, and he collapses, unconscious. I stagger to my feet, move towards the open trunk, and see a woman huddled inside, her hands and feet bound. "Are you okay?" I ask, my voice weakening from blood loss. "I'm okay. Thank you. Thank you so much." Just then, the flashing lights and wailing sirens of police cars appear down the dirt road. I sigh in relief, knowing it's over. As the police officers approach, I collapse, exhausted from blood loss. But I remain conscious enough to see them handcuff the kidnapper and help the woman into an ambulance. When I wake up, I'm in a hospital bed. Morning sunlight streams through the window, and beside me is Miranda, my daughter, holding my hand tightly. Miranda hugs me gently, careful not to touch my wound. "Dad, you're my hero." I smile, a wave of happiness washing over me, despite the throbbing pain from my injury.